Hello, welcome to the 56th edition of Drive-Thru Review. Today I'm going to talk about Julius Caesar. It is a Columbia block game. It is a war game. This is going to be first of several videos that I do over the next, probably over the next year, but over the next several months, where I kind of dip my feet into the war game area. I mainly play Euros. If you watch my videos at all, I'm sort of like have a Euro background. And anything that has cards in it I like. And this game has cards. But so this game is about the Roman Civil War, Caesar versus Pompey. Very historical, very integrated with the history. Let me just stop right here, show you a little bit about how the game works and some of the mechanics involved, and then I'll come back and tell you what I think. Okay, so I've got the map set up here to start the game, and there's a fixed setup that you can do to start your game, and there are some variations that you can do to maybe swap in some different units here on the board, but for the most part this is how you're going to play. You're going to play over the course of 5 possible turns, and there's a little turn track you can see up here in the corner for each basically representing a year, and you move that up. And so you're going to play until either the game is over or somebody has 10 victory points worth of control on the board at the end of any one turn. Now you can see that Caesar, the player up north here, starts only with 1 victory point, and Pompey starts off with actually with 7. So you need 10 to win. So immediately Caesar here is at a disadvantage, coming in through this wedge here from the north, returning back to Rome. Pompey's got his forces spread out a little bit more than Caesar, and he's even got some forces over here on the side. So in addition to the blocks that are currently on the board, each player is going to have a pool of units that they can bring onto the board throughout their turn. The game also comes with 4 dice that'll be used for combat, and a stack of cards that are going to be used on each turn. So there's 2 types of cards in the game. You've got your command cards here, which are going to show a value for movement. That's the value in the flag there, in this case 2. And a value for levies, and that's the number of pips on the staff there. So this one is 2 movement, 2 levies. This one you can see is 4 movement and 1 levy. So you've got your command cards, and you've also got your event cards, and there's a couple of these in the game. So what players are going to do on their turn is they're going to start with a hand of 6 cards to start each round, and then players will get rid of 1 card that they don't want, and then I'll leave them with 5 cards in their hand. And then at the start of each turn, each player will submit a card face down. Once each player's done that, both players will reveal the card. And then whoever has the highest movement cost will get the initiative on that round. So if these 2 cards were played, Caesar played the 4-1, and Pompey played the 2-3, Caesar would get to do his 4 movements and his levy, and then Pompey would do his 2 movements and his 2 levies. And then if there were any battles on the board, then we would have a battle. If anybody plays an event card, that will trump any command cards, and you'll do the effect of the event, and then the other player will do his command card. Now if 2 players, or both players, play each an event card, they'll actually cancel each other out, and then that round is over. You'll just go right on to the next card. Now let me just break down these blocks in a little bit more detail. You can see here's a Caesar control block, you can tell with the brown, and the Pompey control block, which is the green. And in the upper left hand corner of each of these blocks is just it's sort of like the name of the block, so to speak, where this, if the rulebook refers to this during setup, Legio number 36, and it tells you to put it at a certain spot, this is how you figure out which block it is. And then other than that, there's got really no gameplay purposes. And you can see as you rotate these blocks, you got a 4 to start with, a 3, 2, 1. This is basically the amount of strength that this particular unit has. So right now it's at full strength with 4, and this one's at full strength with 4. And this is also the number of dice that will be rolled when this unit attacks. So right, in this case it's going to roll 4 dice. If it took some damage and it was down to 2, then you'd only roll 2 dice on an attack. In the right hand corner here, you can see the combat value. And so the combat value for the letter is basically the initiative that it gets. So the A's are going to roll before the B's are going to roll before the C's are before D's, etc. Now, the defender usually always rolls first. So in this case, if there were two Bs and Caesar was the defender, then he would roll his Bs before Pompey rolled his Bs. There are some event cards that will change that, but for the most part, the defender always rolls first. Now the 1 in this case on the B1 and the 2 on the C2 is the number that needs to be rolled to inflict a hit on your opponent. Now you don't attack units directly. When you're in battle, all the units will be grouped together, and then I will say I'm attacking with B1, so I'll roll 4 dice. Let's say I get 2 1s, and then my opponent has to choose which units will take the damage. But the only rule for that is that they have to choose the units that have the highest current strength. So if I was attacking Pompey here and I inflicted 2 hits, then the Pompey player would have to reduce this unit first because it had a 4, and now for the second hit that it would have to inflict, it could choose, because both of these were equal at 3, so he could choose this one, and then next time it got a hit, it would have to choose this one because this is now the one with the highest strength. The other information of note is the name under the unit here, and this isn't necessarily the name, it's almost like the type. So if the name is a town, in this case, or a city, Ephesus, that means that this unit can only be brought onto the board in this town. If it's controlled by another Pompey unit, then this could be brought in at Ephesus. Now if it doesn't have a name of a town, if it's just a type like auxiliary or equestrian unit or a boat or something like that, there's not a specific town that it can only be recruited in. So let me show you a little bit about how this is going to flow and how the movement and the battles are dictated, and go from there. Let's say the Pompey player had played this card with 2 movement and 2 levies, and it was now their turn to move. Well, when you move an entire group of units as 1. So if I move this whole group of units, I would move this as 1, and that would be 1 movement point. So when a group of units moves, it can move 2 spaces. Or it can move 1 space and attack. The other thing that you can do is you don't have to actually move them all to the same spot. It's just basically focused on which group you're moving. So I could move, theoretically, him up here and this guy up here like that. So that would still only cost 1 movement point. The other thing to keep in mind with movement is on your turn, you have to pay attention to what type of road you're moving across. There's basically 2 types of road. There's these thick roads here and these roads with a dotted line. On your turn, a total of only 2 units may move across a dotted line, like so. So to give you a sense of that situation, if there were 3 units here, I could not move all 3 of them across this dotted line. I could move 2 this way, and then I would have to either leave him there or send him in another direction if I wanted to. The thick lines, you can move 4 units across a thick line. So in this case, I can move these guys 1, 2, and that's 1 movement point. You can either move 2 spaces or 1 in attack. So that would be 1 movement, and then I could move these guys 1, 2, because this is a thick line, then a dotted line, and that would be my 2 movement points, at which point I could levy. Now levying is basically one of 2 things. I can levy a unit that's on the board, and I can increase their strength by 1 for each levy point. So if I wanted to spend those 2 levy points, I could do boom, boom, just like that, and that would use up my 2 levy points. The other thing you can do with levying is put a unit on the board. So you can see in this case, this is Antioch here. So I would need a friendly unit already in Antioch, and then I could bring him in, and he would come in with a strength of 1. All units that are levied onto the board coming in with a strength of 1. So he would come on there. That could be my first levy point, and then I could use my second to increase his strength like so. So it's very key to have some sort of area control, even if it's just 1 unit on some of these spots on the board, so you can get new units and build some reinforcements to then hopefully make an attack or something like that on a later turn. So let's set up a little fictional scenario here for an attack. Let's say Caesar is here, he controls Ephesus, and then I'm Pompey and I want to move into here. Now like I said before, when you move, you can move 2 spaces, if the roads let you move that many units across it, or you can move 1 space and attack. So I couldn't move here and then here. I've got to come in and then set myself up like so. So now I've set myself up to be attacked by Caesar as well. So that you've got to really kind of be a little bit patient here and not, fragment your forces too much. So let's say we had it set up like this. And so now I've got 2 movement points and 2 levies. So I could take this unit and move it in for 1 movement point, and then bring this unit in, this group here, in for reserves. And I'll explain reserves in a minute. But only after you've moved and possibly levied, then you will initiate any combat that happens. And combat always happens if there are 2 groups of the opposing factions in the same city. So in this case, what happens is, let's say this was the only battle, everybody's going to show their units, and then Caesar will reveal his to me. And then it's nice to just kind of organize them in a way that you've got like A, B, C, etc. And then the defender's going to roll first. They're going to roll all their A's first, and then the attacker will roll all their A's. If nobody has any A's, we just go to the B's, and so on. And you're just going to roll the number of dice per strength down the line. And so all this is going to happen right away. So if his defender rolls these 3 dice, and let's say he got 2 hits on there, I've got to take those 2 hits right away. And so that when it comes my turn to attack, I'm now already depleted in the number of dice I roll. So you've got to be real mindful of that. You may go on thinking, I'm going to roll tons of dice, and then the defender's just going to jack you up, and you're only going to be rolling like 2 dice for your starting attacks. So you're always required to do at least 1 round of combat, and then starting with round 2, the units have an option of retreating. And combat is always 4 rounds, and the attacker is forced to leave in round 4. So you don't get any, basically offensive maneuvers in there. You have to retreat. So you've got to get in, make an effective strike, and get out. Now, if I had brought in reserves here for my second movement point, like I spoke of earlier, these would stay hidden until the start of round 2, at which point then I would reveal these, and then they could join the combat. Now, if a unit is destroyed in combat, it's basically pulled off the board and then set aside face up so that it can't be levied back onto the board that turn until the next turn has gone by, at which point they can be levied back on the board. However, if you killed somebody's leader, like if Caesar were killed here, then you would take that, and that will actually count as a victory point towards your total at the end of the game. So that's a real brief kind of combat overview. Now let's talk about these navis, or these are the boats. And this is a very key unit in the game. So the way that you can get boats onto the board is you must have a friendly unit in a major port. And those are signified by these boats, and then they're all capital letters for the city. Now Pompey currently controls Cleopatra. Now she can actually switch sides, but he currently controls her, so he could summon or levy this boat into here, like so. And boat movement is basically roughly the same as land movement, where you can move 2 spaces for 1 movement point. So starting in the port, I can move to this sea, or from this sea to this sea. And then if I were to start the turn, and let's say here, I could do there to a port here that was adjacent to this sea. That would be 2 movement, sea, port. Once you have a boat there, and let's say you had a couple of boats like so, then you can sort of use these as a skipping stone for land units as a way to sort of transport them from one spot to the next. But that actually eats up 1 whole movement per unit. It's not per group in that case, it's per unit. So if I wanted to, I could skip Cleopatra across as many friendly seas as I wanted up to an adjacent port, like that. So it's real nice to have control over these sort of traffic lanes here to get your troops to the different areas that you need. So it's very key, and this is really one of the funner aspects of the game. I really like this dynamics of just all the different types of traffic lanes, and trying to sneak units in and maybe bounce through as somebody's building up a bunch of forces going up one side, and then you dump a couple back here, levy up some forces once you control that area, and then go. It's kind of like, you see there's that layer of sort of backstabbery that's going on underneath the covers of this map. You can kind of see that both factions trying to recruit these different, armies and generals and whatnot to fight for them. Okay, so that's a brief overview of the game mechanics. It's not every little detail, but that's pretty much the game, what I showed you. I like this game a lot. I've played it 5 times now, and I have not played it with anybody else that hasn't played it. So I've played it against folks that have played block games for a while. So I actually won my 5th game finally. But this game is really, really good. Um, it's hard to it's funny because if I kind of like something, it's easier for me to talk about. If I really like something, it's hard for me to talk about because there's certain subtleties that become available to you and apparent to you in this game. You've got the sort of the map area with the different roads. You know, you got the dotted lines. You can only move a little bit there. The big roads and sort of the routes to kind of surround your opponent and kind of attrition them out. Not really attrition them, but you just surround them and kind of choke them off and take them over that way. You've got your sea routes, your naval routes, and you've got sort of what units are you going to try to summon on the board. And just all those different approaches. And then you've got the layer of the card play where, in my last game, I actually had a relatively useless event card in my hand. But for some reason, somehow I knew that my opponent was going to play an event. I knew it was going to be horrible for me. So I saved that card, and then I played the event to cancel out the event. And that basically, I think that really won me the game at that point. I think it was like the 3rd turn. And I've seen where I've all lost the game because of a decision. It seems like it kind of happens in probably the 3rd or 4th, round or turn. And you're like, I'll move in and I'll maybe make a stupid attack, or I'll set myself up so that I don't have anybody to reserve, or I've got myself kind of choked off based on where all the roads are, maybe on one side of the map. So I really like that aspect of it. It's hard to say if somebody will or will not like a game, but I pretty much recommend this game to everybody. Some people say, "Oh, I never have time for 2-player games," or whatever. But I mean, make time. I don't know. That sounds kind of harsh. I don't really mean it that way, but I would really make time to play this with somebody, and just kind of experience that. I like it because this game, everything mechanically is abstracted. You're not dealing with tons of information on the board. There's not tons of information. There's a fair amount, with the different roads, the seas, the different types of units, the different levels of cards and things like that. So there is a decent amount of information, but it's not overwhelming like I assume like huge war games can be for some of the ones I have played recently. But that really makes this sort of Euro-y, for total lack of vocabulary. It makes it so it's streamlined, and it kind of leaves a little bit up to you to kind of fill in those little blanks. Like in good music isn't making noise the whole time. Good music is leaving pockets of silence and things like that. So this really kind of hits me on that level where the subtleties and the strategies are not going to come to you right away, and you're going to get wiped out if you play with somebody that knows what they're doing. But it's not so heavy-handed that you'll never be able to compete with them. I mean, there are some dice rolling, so that gives you a little bit of a chance. And you may get a good or bad hand of cards. So, but it's not, for me, it didn't feel totally overwhelming. The luck factor of it, and it maybe did turn maybe a loss into a victory, but I'm thinking of one game in particular where the game was still close. I had only lost by 2 points. We actually completed the whole game. And yeah, the dice rolls were not in my favor, but still, I mean, I feel like it was a fun game. I don't have to, I gotta win. I'm not a, I almost used a bad word. I'm not a jerk like that, So, I mean, you want to try to win, but, so I would definitely recommend this. It's got a nice, just kind of even keel to it, not a whole lot of stress as far as a lot of rules or anything like that. But there's still some real exciting moments, and the more you play, the game will take on different shapes and things like that. So anyway, thanks.